Hello, my brothers and sisters, and welcome to another episode of Off the Beaten Path, the show that looks at paranormal events both historically as well as in modern day times. As always, I'm your host, Reverend Hagen. Now, today's show is going to be a little bit unusual. We're going to be looking at paranormal investigation, kind of the boots on the ground work. Everything from the tools that you'll need, doing it on a budget, how I started, and the different kinds of investigations that you can do. What I do now is very different than what I did when I first started out. So let's take a look. Paranormal investigations. Here we go. Now, when I started out doing paranormal investigations, it was very there weren't a whole lot of people doing it. This is, probably back in, good Lord, 84, 85, something like that. Maybe a little bit later, maybe as late as 86. But I had read an article in a magazine called Fate Magazine, which used to be a big deal at the time if you were into the paranormal. There weren't a whole lot of publications for you to find out what was going on. There were some books you could find if you were really into it, and I had scads of them. Some of them are still here behind me. There was no internet, so you couldn't just look up a YouTube video. YouTube didn't exist for another, 20 years or something. Maybe more than that. Who knows? So I'd read this article where this gal was going to cemeteries and different kind of historical places like the pyramids. I think she went to the Sphinx. This is all back when you could do that kind of thing in Egypt. And what she would do is she would record questions and then play it back. What we now know is an EVP, where she wouldn't hear any response, but when she played it back, oftentimes she would hear voices on it replying to her questions. It blew me away. I know now that kind of thing is almost passe, like, oh, an EVP. Yeah, we see those all the times on Ghost Hunters or whatever. Back in the day, that was a big deal, and it's still a big deal to me. When I get an EVP, an electric voice phenomenon, I get totally stoked still, 35 plus years later. Back then, I used an old bulky tape recorder, the kind that we used to have, where it was a big box. You opened it up, you put the tape in, you had to press play and record at the same time. Headphones were kind of hard. Well, they weren't hard to come by because everybody had them in the 70s and that kind of thing. I just didn't have any, so I'd be right against the speaker, listening to see if I had anything. And I would go to cemeteries to do this. And I started getting EVPs. I started getting responses to my question. And I was floored. Now, as far as definitive proof, that was not it. Because it was just me, a tape recorder, in the graveyard, right? So there was nobody there to corroborate what was going on. It could have been me faking it. It wasn't, but it could have been. But since it was just me, I was really excited because I was picking up, in my estimation, proof of the paranormal. A lot of people say, especially when you do an EVP outside, if you're recording these things outside, they're not looked at as valid because there's so much, the wind, and there's the way, like especially out here in the desert, the way sound carries and vibrates. It's very hard to say what was definitely there and what wasn't, right? But for me, it got me off and running. The next thing I did was there was a guy named Professor Stan, Dr. Stan. He was a parapsychologist when that was a thing. And honestly, anybody that claims to get their degree in parapsychology today, I'm just going to say is full of it. You may be able to get one in some new agey kind of a certification thing, but that's not a PhD. And that's what some of these guys actually could get in colleges in the 70s and 80s. It's no longer a thing. I don't even know if it was the thing then. But I went on a case, and my shift was, I think, 1 to 4 in the baby's room of this house in Sacramento that was haunted. And I got really cold. There was a cold spot. very almost cinematic. Now you could almost see my breath, or I could. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I got hit with the fight or flight response in the back of my head. I was immediately horrified, terrified, juiced up, and I ran. And Dr. Stan met me on the stairs and said, "What are you doing?" I told him what happened. He's like, "That's our job, is to go in there and investigate this. If you can't do it, leave now. But buck up, little cowboy, basically, and get back in there and do your job." It was a game changer for me. So, like I said, I started out with nothing, with just a old tape recorder that we had in our house. I was 19, I think, when I started doing that experiment. I was 19 when I went out with Dr. Stan. And then life happened. You know, I was still reading Fate magazine like a devout, you know, Christian, if it was the Bible. The paranormal became everything to me. In the intervening years, I got clean, which was very good. I also found my spiritual path. I had my son, the first of my children, Michael, and everything kind of got put on the back burner for a little bit. Then I got back into it, and even then I was still using a little tape recorder device. I had a camera, and we'll go over that in just a second here, but it really did start a journey that has and an itch that I haven't been able to scratch fully, if you know what I'm saying, for over 35 years. Really exciting and a lot of fun. So let's get into some of the tools of the trade. Here, okay? Like I said, when I started out, I just had the big old tape recorder, right? EVPs. That was the only thing I knew how to catch, other than if you were extraordinarily lucky and you caught something on camera. What I use now is a digital recorder. I have several of these, and so does my partner in crime, my buddy Curtis, who's going to be going on investigations with me in the very near future. We both have these electronic digital recorders, right? There's some school of thinking that says the tape recorders were better, just like it says the old photography is better with the film in it, because it's recording on a magnetic strip, right? And the electromagnetic frequencies that apparitions are supposed to produce to be able to communicate with us or manifest themselves would record better on the magnetic tape. I have had great luck with both. So I use a digital recorder because it's much easier to carry, and you can just download, there's USB ports that I can download this directly into my computer and then analyze the questions that I've asked. Since we're going over just the equipment right now, I'll leave it at that, but we'll get back to that in a second. Back in the day, for EMF readings, electromagnetic frequency readings, I used to use a compass. Not this compass. This is kind of a fancy schmancy compass. I was a topographic analyst in the Army, and this was the compass that I used. Anyway, this is if there's a fluctuation in the electromagnetic field, the compass won't point to true north. It'll behave erratically, right? So that was what it was back in the day. Now I have what's called a melmeter. Now this produces an infrared light. It also lets you know the temperature in the room, and it measures the electromagnetic frequency in the room. And there's trace radiation that you can set it up to record to that I have not done. I've never used that. Now, I also mentioned photography. Now, this is an IR camera, right? It's not the fanciest one you can get. Oh, see, it just turned on. How exciting. But you can get one like this that shines an IR light and will pick up images in the infrared spectrum, right? Super cool. Super neat tool to have. The better ones that are just way too out of my price range just pick up the IR spectrum. In fact, you can get cameras that pick up every spectrum, which are incredibly expensive, but really, really cool. There's also something that you can get called a a flare camera, FLRE, something to that effect, that picks up the different temperatures visually, right? It'll show you the heat signature of something. If something enters the room, if something's cold. They are amazing. I do not have the cash for that kind of thing. Hopefully, if this show takes off a little bit, we will have, that cheddar cheese to get all the toys that we want. Now, that being said, basically nothing has changed, in my opinion, in paranormal investigating since back in the day. We still are looking for, whether we're using a compass or a millimeter, we're still looking for electromagnetic frequencies, because that's what happens when something manifests itself. Usually there's a huge spike in the EMF field, right? That can be very primitively, but it will affect the compass. So you will get measurable electromagnetic frequency results, right? The voice recording, the EVPs, it went from tape recorder to digital recorder. I don't know what it will be next, but the technology has changed, but the tools have basically stayed the same. You can get EMF meters that, if anything comes within 10 feet that's emitting an EMF reading, excuse my stutter, it'll go off. There's all kinds of super cool tools out there, but it's all basically the same thing. So if you wanted to start out, right, if you had an idea that a place was haunted, you could, at a very reasonable price, get an EVP, right, a digital recorder for your EVPs. You could just get a compass, but a really nice compass like this one probably costs as much as the same. Probably costs the same. I'm just butchering everything today. Probably costs the same as a low-end EMF meter, and they still measure electromagnetic frequencies. So the only reason they're low-end is the packaging and how much it actually registers, right? This is a digital. Numbers come up. I don't have battery in this one right now, but numbers come up on this to let you know the base range, and if it's going up or going down. You can get it to the 100th degree, right? The 100th place decimally. These are a lot more expensive. This is a very old one. I bought this thing, must have been 20 years ago now. Very old model, but it still works like a champ, so I keep using it. So basically, you can, for not a lot of money, you can get started. I would encourage you, as long as you're respectful, and that's really important, to maybe go get a digital recorder. You can get these things for $20. Get a digital recorder and go to a cemetery. See if you get any answers. See if this is, even that can be, let me just preface this by saying, even that can be really creepy, okay? This will judge, and go at night too. Well, actually, don't go at night, because you might get kicked out. I don't want anybody to trespass and, oh, Reverend Hagen on YouTube told me to go at night. Use your head. Be responsible adults, all right? But try it. Try to go to a place that you know is creepy, if you feel that it's creepy, and see if this is for you. Just with something really simple, like a digital recorder. Maybe take some pictures. Now, I have on my cell phone, my IR camera wasn't working, and I was using my cell phone, and the flash stopped working. It's this one really amazingly, let's just say it was haunted place that I was investigating. It was a mobile home, for goodness sakes. And the two craziest cases I've ever worked were in mobile homes. Crazy. And what I wanted to say about that is that I ended up flashing, or just taking a bunch of pictures with my phone, right? It was dark. I figured, well, maybe it'll pick up something. I don't know. It was an old iPhone I had. And I just started clicking pictures. And I got some absolutely remarkable pictures. This weird green light. That whole case was absolutely wild. I'll actually do a show on that next week. One of the really important things about paranormal investigation that doesn't get talked about a lot is the actual investigation part of it, not just the boots on the ground investigation with all the toys that we've talked about, but investigating the house, the people. For me, the way I run an investigation is we'll do background on the property, who's owned it, has anybody died on the property, and then we'll also interview the clients, right? The people that, if it's a person that's having this problem, right? If it's a historical site, they're really usually stoked to give you all the background information on it. It's kind of their job. It's their passion. It's why they're working there, right? And they'll give you all the nuts and bolts about, the property and the whole 9 yards. Families are a little different. And when you do interview a household, what you want to do is a few things. First, when you interview people, you need to separate them. Kind of like if you're doing a murder investigation, where you interview each person separately about their experiences in the house. If you do it the other way, if they're all sitting together, what you'll get is people feeding off of each other. Their stories will get, oh yeah, and oh, mine had black hair too, and oh, the girl looked like the girl from The Ring, or what. It engages their imagination, and they start getting a little crazy. And it's kind of how you start. You don't end with that initial interview, because you are going to walk through the house, get a baseline of your electromagnetic frequency, right? What's normal for that house? You may find an area that's got a pretty big signature, EMF signature on it, but when you do a few passes through the house, okay, well, it's heavy here. And then if you do a little further investigation, oh, this is why, because there's all these electronics here, or there's stuff on the other side of this wall that are causing this electromagnetic frequency spike, right? You get that baseline. And you talk to them throughout the investigation about their experiences and what they've been through. The actual nuts and bolts experience usually happens at night, right? 3 o'clock, for whatever reason, seems to be the witching hour, for lack of a better term. As a Wiccan high priest, that always cuts my teeth a little bit, but 3 o'clock in the morning just seems to be the time. Now there's a much broader sense where people will say between 2 and 4 a.m. is when things really start to kick up. And it for the most part, that's true. If you're in a place with paranormal activity, that's usually the time of day that it does. So you're up all night, and then you go home, you get some sleep, and then the really painstaking bit is reviewing the materials, because you may have digital recorders going and video recorders going in more than one room at a time, maybe for hours at a time. And you have to go through every frame of that footage and those recordings to see if there's anything on there. I had one case where I had the digital recorder like on a speaker of a house. It was just it was that mobile home I talked about earlier, and I had put the digital recorder on top of the speaker, and then went about and investigated the house. And like I said, there was no electricity in this house at all. The speaker was just there because they were using that particular mobile home on their property for storage. And we're going over this stuff, and it's very hard to stay focused when you're just listening to hours of static, right? Or you hear your voice in the background as you're asking questions on another digital recorder, or you're talking to your cohort saying, hey man, did you hear that? Or, oh, wow, do you feel that? You'll hear all that in the background. And on this one particular case, all that's going on, and then I started hearing this heavy breathing, and it's just me and one other investigator in this place, right? And then we start hearing these growls come through, and it was like, whoa! And it came so far out of nowhere when we were going over the evidence that it was like, wow, that's pretty intense. So I just wanted to throw that out there, especially investigating the property. And then when I say investigating the people, I'm not talking about doing a background check, getting their social security numbers, or any of that crud. I'm talking about investigating the property. You also want to find out the religious affiliation of the peoples in the house, if any, because it will help you proceed down the road if you are one of those groups that tries to help get rid of the phenomenon, if that's what the people want. because they don't always want to get rid of it. Some people just want to figure out how to live with it, and that's okay too. Now, the next thing you want to think about is once you've started, right, and you got the bug, the minute you get a scintilla of evidence, whether it's verifiable or not, if you're anything like me, you're going to be hooked. That's just the deal, right? Or maybe you're not. I'd always been fascinated by ghost stories, UFOs. I'd had experiences as a kid. So for me, it was so exciting. Now, my sister, she passed away a few years back. She was about a year and a half older, 2 years older than I was. And she gave me so much grief about doing paranormal investigation, I can't even tell you. She'd go, oh, you're just ridiculous. And I would be like, Leslie, these are the two big questions, right? Are we alone in the universe? UFOs, right? Are we alone? And what happens to us when we die? Those are the big two, which are primarily what happens in paranormal investigations, right? So, I started off just going to places I had heard were haunted, which was a lot of fun. And then when I was in the Army, I became friends with Charlemagne, one of my best all-time friends. We're still close to this day. He's a great man. But we shared a passion for the paranormal. And we started going, he was from Oregon. So I was stationed at Fort Lewis, which is in Washington, and we drive down to Oregon on the weekends and do some investigating in places that he had had experiences, because he had a ton of experiences in his youth as well. It was a lot of fun. We were not professional at all, but really, really had a good time doing it. We went to the Cathedral Bridge in Oregon, just a lot of places that were kind of renowned in the area for being haunted, right? And did our own investigations. We decided very early to stop drinking beer during the investigations because we ended up just giggling and being idiots and having a good time. So, no drinking and no smoking pot or anything else nefarious you might be doing. That is my advice to you if you're really going to be an investigator. It is fun, but you don't want to have too much fun, if you know what I mean. So that's how it started to progress. And then when I got out of the Army and it was just kind of me, I started this organization called Where Angels Fear to Tread. And started doing kind of putting my card out there and saying, hey, if anybody's got, anything that they want investigated, I'm your guy. Been doing this for a number of years, and by that time I'd been doing it for 10, 15 years, something like that, and maybe longer. And then I went to something called a moot, M-O-O-T. It's a gathering basically of pagans, right? Of Wiccans, of people that call themselves heathens, that follow the Norse gods, basically anything that's not Abrahamic in nature, like Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, the Islamic faith, Muslims. And it's just a place to network. But I put my cards out there to say, hey, if anybody's got, some sort of spiritual anomalies, for lack of a better word, let me know, and we'll see if we can figure out what's going on. And I got my first case. And that's the deal. You can go to haunted places, right? Public places out in the middle of nowhere, right? Or a friend's house that's haunted or whatever. If you're just trying to get evidence of the paranormal, there's that kind of paranormal investigation. And then there's the kind where somebody has hired you to come on. Now, I don't take money for my cases. I do ask people to either reimburse me or give me money for travel and for food and board if I have to travel someplace to get there. Typically, I don't stay in anything other than like the shadiest motels about, just because they're the cheapest, right? The kind of motels that the doors are on the parking lot kind of thing. There's almost nothing between you and anybody that decides to walk up and knock on your door. It's a hoot. But I'm not making money on this. It's just, and I'll submit receipts when it has come to that of like, no, this is what I did, blah blah So, in my opinion, be kind of leery if somebody's charging you a fortune to get rid of your ghosts or the demons or whatever they say is in your house. Investigating in the Antelope Valley, I ran across 2 groups that were charlatans that are not around anymore. One was kind of a big deal, and they got kind of burly with me. It was really funny. They said, "Hey, their EVPs, I listed that there were 2 different clients that I was behind them on, right? They investigated, then they wanted me to investigate. And when I did the investigation in the second one, I'm like, that EVP sounds exactly like the EVP from the previous case that I was on. How strange." And so I confronted them on it. And they were not happy. They were like, "You're accusing me of being a fraud?" And I was like, "Absolutely. You're ridiculous." And they actually, one of them tried to get physically burly with me. I just don't let the tattoos and the beard fool you. I don't do that kind of thing anymore. Like, brother, I don't know what you're thinking, but whatever you think is going to happen isn't going to happen, right? This is silly. I just don't go in for that kind of thing. Part of it is being a minister, finding my path. I'm a priest with the Order of Yggdrasil, the great tree, the great ash. It's a path that involves the interconnectedness of literally everything. And it's very fulfilling for me spiritually, and being a priest and walking that path has been a great honor, if I'm being honest. Hope it doesn't turn anybody off, but if it does, what can you do? So, and along those lines, if you're going to do private investigations, right? And let's say you catch something on there. Let's say you catch some EVPs. Let's say you catch a shadow person. Let's say you think it's a demon. What are you going to do? You've got evidence, right, for the client, but what's your next step? For me and for where angels fear to tread, and I've had other investigators throughout the years come and go, it has been, well, we can do a house clearing for you. If they're Catholic, I always encourage them to have their Catholic priest come. If they're pagan, I can take care of it. A lot of people just like that there's an ordained minister, like myself, that will spiritually clean the house. You can sage. But if you don't know what you're doing in that particular area of getting rid of these things or trying to clear these spirits or demons or whatever, shadow people, don't do it on your own. Ask for help. The paranormal communities, there's a lot of egos involved, especially now, but for the most part, they're a very open, very welcoming group of people. And if you genuinely ask somebody for help, if you're in over your head, they'll help you out. Along those lines, there are things that you can wear while you're doing it. I've given things to clients to wear, one of which, since I'm not a Catholic, this is a rosary. I seem to collect religious paraphernalia, for lack of a better term, holy items. This is a rosary. It's got the crucifixion. Here, this little bit right here is actually dirt from Jerusalem, from the Holy Land. And, believe it or not, it was blessed by the Pope. Fancy schmancy, right? All super cool. And it does have a feel of juju to it, you know. And I've given this to people while I'm doing investigations at their home, if they are a Catholic. Because the dirt from Jerusalem, the blessing from the Pope, really means a lot to them. And the whole point is not to feed my ego or to bolster my spiritual path. It's to help the client, help the person that has come to you and asked for help. That's it. I also have a little effigy of, I don't think you can really see that, but that's Ganesh. I've got pentagrams. There you go. St. Christopher medals. All kinds of stuff. Right? There's all kinds of little talismans that you can get to, if you think they're going to help you keep you safe, they probably will. I went a few steps further. Most of my tattoos, the reason my arms are showing today, is most of these tattoos, if not all of them, are for spiritual protection from different cultures around the planet. You can't have too many saviors, right? I even have the big Celtic cross on my forearm. I was born the year of the snake, in according to the Japanese calendar or the Chinese calendar. So you can do all that stuff. I do highly recommend, if you are going to a place and you do experience stuff, to do a cleansing ritual, right? Whether it's saging yourself. I have a prayer that I use from Ray Buckland's path, who was kind of the grandfather of witchcraft, Joseph Gardner was the grandfather of witchcraft, but Ray Buckland was one of his students. So in his book, The Complete Book of Witchcraft, there's some really neat prayers in there, and one of them I've adopted in my own practice, and it works very well. You could do Psalm 23, to try to get rid of any residual energy that you think because you don't want to bring that stuff home, right? Now, I know I've already lost some of you because you're like, good Lord, Reverend Hagen, what are you talking about, man? Why are you getting all hairy-fairy on me? Why are you bringing up all this, new agey stuff? This is stuff that's been used since these kind of things have been going on. These kind of investigations have been going on. I know for me, I actually brought something home one time. I was nothing horrible, but I was folding laundry in my bedroom, and I felt this push against my legs, which at the time, my youngest, that's Gabriel, he used to push the back of my legs, right, when he wanted to get crazy. He's a little guy, like 4 years old or something. And I went, Gabe, come on, let me finish folding laundry. And I hear him from the living room go, what do you want, Dad? I was like, oh, well, that's peculiar. That doesn't usually happen at home. But I didn't pick up any malevolence from this thing. It was just something that was kind of screwing around. And I treated it accordingly and sent it back home. Kind of tools of the trade. If you're asked, ask any questions you want in the comment section below. Absolutely. But if you're going to ask me the nuts and bolts of clearing a house, I'm not going to give it to you. Some of that is oath protected. Just like any other church, there are things that you take an oath that you will not reveal, because it's just part of almost any esoteric organization. Everything from the Masons, the Rosicrucians, who I was a part of for a very brief period of time, almost any Wiccan heathen path, there is an oath involved of secrecy. So I'm not going to tell you, but that doesn't mean they're not out there. And half of this stuff is published now anyway. So I'm sure you go on Amazon, you can just Google it, for goodness sakes, and it'll probably give you quite a few ideas. So that's pretty much dealing with client-based investigations. Now, the next kind of investigation you could do is a cryptoid investigation, right? Like Bigfoot or Dogmen or, any of the other Loch Ness and lake kind of monsters, right? Or spirits, Loch Ness, the Jersey Devil. I would caution you to bring people with you. Don't go out there alone, and don't go out there with one other person. I don't really know if an EMF meter in that particular situation is going to help you or not. That kind of thing, if you're going out into the woods, like, let's say, for Bigfoot, right, Sasquatch, the Yeti, the Jersey Devil, the Dogman, if you're going to be going out in a rural area, for one thing, make sure it's public land you're going on, and it's not hunting season. Okay? Don't be crazy about this kind of thing. The other thing you might want to do is bring an experienced tracker with you. Or if you're a hunter, if you live near a rural area and you've hunted all your life, you know the area, you know what tracks look like and don't look like, right? You know the sounds of that area. Bring somebody, if you're going to a different location, right? Something you're not familiar with, bring somebody along who is familiar with it, okay? That'll know, oh, that's just that screeching noise you hear. That's the, Mockingjay, blue, blah, blue, bluebird. You know what I mean? They'll know what it is that they're dealing with, and be safe, because you're not just dealing with a potential cryptoid, right? You're dealing with bears, you're dealing with mountain lions, you're dealing with wolves or coyotes. Like out here in the desert, it's Coyote City, and because of the heat and the drought and all the fires that we've had out here, going out at night can be a dangerous proposition, because all the animals, especially the ones that were all in the mountains around here, the mountains have been on fire all year. So those animals are not in their normal habitat, and they're hungry and they're scared. So all I'm trying to say is be smart about it and be safe. Let's say you could catch the greatest evidence in the world of a Bigfoot, and they get mauled by a bear or something, and then so nobody's going to see it anyway. Goodness gracious. You don't want to be on a found footage movie. At least I don't think you do. And if you're going to a lake, it's kind of the same deal. People look at lakes and think, oh, well, it's a lake. What can happen? Well, what you're at, especially if it's a freshwater lake or there's a river or a creek feeding into this, or if you're going to a river, that's a water source for a lot of the wildlife in that area, even the lakes. So please be careful. If you're going to do that, if you're going to go on a cryptoid thing, some of the equipment you might want to use, drones are great. I have 2 or 3 drones myself that I've never used. They're still in the box. Because of some physical stuff. When I got them, the show was back in the day, and it was really starting to ramp up. And I'm thinking, hey, I can start going out to these locations and doing these things, right? And my health said, no, I don't think so. The universe kind of took me down a peg, which is fine. That's what the universe does sometimes. But maybe a drone. You definitely want some kind of flare or a temperature reader. You know what I mean? Like a visual thing where you can see if there's a living thing in the forest. You know what I'm saying? Again, just be safe. The other thing to worry about, I'm just going to throw this out there, with doing a cryptoid search is like the missing 411 phenomenon by David Pilati. I mean, case after case of people disappearing in the woods and in national parks for completely unexplainable reasons and never found again, or found 2 miles away dead. Not everybody that goes missing in a federal or state park, of course, goes missing under mysterious circumstances. Some do get killed by wildlife. Some fall. Some break an ankle, but they're out there by themselves. But there's a lot of cases that are very, very strange. So just be aware. I used to teach Aikido, right? And which is a martial arts, a non-violent martial arts. And what we would tell people is that if you get nothing else out of this, hopefully your awareness has opened up a little bit. You're more open and aware of life, the universe, and everything. So if you feel like, I don't want to walk down that alley or down that street, or alley, but down that street because I feel a little weird about it, don't walk down the street. You're not giving into fear. Your body is letting you know, hey, that's a bad call. We developed this when we were like hunter-gatherers, right? When a predator was nearby, we'd feel it. We'd juice up. Nothing has changed. It's just the environment's changed, right? We all think we're slick because we've got cell phones and digital recorders and YouTube, right? But we're still those base animals. We still have those instincts. So if you feel like now I can go to a party and be like, oh man, something bad's going to go down. And I just take off. And then something bad will go down. Or if you don't go down that street, you may never know whether or not something bad was going to happen. The only thing you've lost is 2 or 3 minutes going around or whatever, driving the other way. Who knows? Anywho's, that's really I've meandered all over the place. That really is the nuts and bolts of investigating. Start out as simple as you want. I would really encourage you to start simply, like just get a digital recorder and really go to a place that you think is haunted and see if it's for you before you invest a bunch of money in EMF meters and IR cameras and doodads that pick up EMF meters that are just super cool, or a flare deal. Don't spend $800 on a camera if you're not sure this is for you. And don't let your pride get you either. All right? And what I mean by that is, if you start doing this because you thought it was cool on TV or whatever, and it really scares the crap out of you, don't do it. If you don't want to do this, don't do it. Just pass the ball to somebody else. I know we're kind of conditioned in society. No, face your fears. Some of this stuff is really hairy and can really affect you spiritually, psychologically, physically. It's just things to think about. Just want to keep you safe because I love you guys. You're my brothers and sisters, whether you know it or not. That's pretty much it. I really hope you dug the show. Please like, comment, and subscribe. I'm really trying to build this channel up. This show's been a little different because it seems like more of me just having a conversation with you, even though you can't talk back. But I really hope you enjoy this. I really enjoy making these videos and educating people. As a teacher, I loved it. I absolutely loved trying to figure out, teaching Aikido. How does this person see the world, and how can I help them? I ran the juniors program with a buddy of mine. We became buddies by training in New School Aikido, which was the name of our dojo. And yeah. So with that, I hope you guys have a fantastic day. Again, I know I just said it, but like, comment, and subscribe. I'm really trying to build this channel. And as always, my brothers and sisters, you keep those heads up. Have a great day.